Welcome to the Museum of Northern Arizona, Colton Garden. Well, glad to have you all back. It's a beautiful day here. And today we have the honor of working with Diné farmer, grower, educator Tyrone Thompson. And he's going to talk to us about a very important element of growing, and that has to do with providing a good soil for your plants to grow in and everything that goes along with that. So we'll step in and Tyrone will talk to you and show you some things we got going on here. And it's just a beautiful day and great to be here at the beautiful Colton Garden with Tyrone.
And welcome, come on in. So yat ishik dosh Diné she Tyrone Thompson shia na Ginny islo na Kate Ginny bashachin aro tkachini dashache na Kate Ginny dashanella. So I just want to say thank you to the community of Flagstaff and the Colton Garden for having us. It's an honor to be here. They have so much to share, and today's theme is going to be how to build our soil. But we're going to cover a variety of topics, including raised beds, season extenders, Three Sisters gardening, and hopefully much more. And so here we're going to start with our compost. And so the museum has a compost here where they're welcoming people to donate their compost to build up their soil here, as well as learning how to build your own soil. So you can see what they have harvested over the fall is a lot of brown matter and brown leaves that we have that fall from the trees out here. And when you come over here, it looks like they have a working compost to where we'll be using some of this black gold, and you can see all these red wigglers in there, and those are composting worms that help eat our garbage and build really healthy soil. So this is another method of composting and ways to build your soil. So there's tons to share, and we're going to dig right in so we can head on over to the garden. But as we go over there, you can see demonstrations of different raised beds, lasagna gardens, season extenders here. Raised beds have a tremendous advantage if you have a clay loam, or if you're growing in a really rocky area, or for folks that are in urban environments, it's tops and in small spaces. So plenty of benefits to raised gardens, including working in a space again that might have caliche, really heavy clay, or a rock. So you can build up organic matter into these raised beds and have instant places to garden. A couple things to look out for while you're building a raised bed is the size and dimension of your bed. So a typical raised bed would be about 4 feet wide by 4 foot increments. So either 4x4, 4x8, 4x12. Is in a 4 foot bed, you're able to harvest about 2. Gonna get challenging to harvest. Factor to consider is the placement of your garden bed. If you have trees or something that's going to block the light that's coming into your garden bed, it might not be that the raised bed's not working for you. It might be that it's in a bad position where you need more light or water. So that's the other component, is how are you going to water your raised bed? Are you going to water it by hand? Are you going to set up a drip irrigation? So there's a few considerations when you're starting your raised bed. Now, when we walk into the garden where we're going to be working, you're going to notice it's not an open space to where we have an open walkway like this. It's against a fence, so the raised bed is a little narrow, a little more narrow. It's at 3 feet to where folks can still harvest the produce. So with that, there's other factors like mitigating predators and little animals. So raised beds like this with a slippery slide is a really good protection barrier for rodents and pests. And I think all of us have experienced some of that problem. So with that, we can go to the garden bed to where we're gonna dig right in. And to the left here, you have more container gardens and really good demonstrations on what you can read. You have hardware cloth covering the raised beds. The other important thing that I would definitely consider when you're doing a raised bed is installing a hoop over the top of the raised bed, because a hoop will allow you to extend your season. For this time, we could put plastic over our hoops. You can see that we have ag fabric over our hoops, and then I'm going to show you how to put a shade cloth over a hoop. So a very low-tech way to make a small greenhouse, so to speak, or a shade house, because in the summertime we have the opposite effect. We have blistering heats out here. So what I'm carrying with me is a planting stick, and for a lot of indigenous cultures, for us as Diné and Navajo people, agriculture starts with the planting stick, gish, and it's a weapon against hunger, poverty, and sickness, Diné, and also it's the male's tool. For the female, they have the steering sticks. A dessin is what we have, and traditionally in our households to keep those things away. It also helps us to pray, helps us to think, and really is protective for our home. So we're gonna do a few things here, and I'm gonna cover a lot. So I hope we don't get it too far ahead. Some of these techniques could be a little advanced. And what I'm going to share with you today is a way to germinate them. And here in the Colton Garden, they say that they have problems with prairie dogs and other rodents. And then for us, we have a lot of problems with rabbits, and goggies are the crows out there. And one method of germinating your seed is just to put them in a coffee can like this with water. And what we find with that is that they'll germinate real okay, but they'll start fermenting. Fermenting means they'll start smelling, and so what that'll attract with those, it'll attract those animals. When they can smell that fermenting corn, it'll bring them to wherever you planted. And so we've had instances where the crows will take out all of our corn and each and every one of our crops, and they're just so specific on where we plant. So they're really knowledgeable of how to take out our corn. So here is an old cloth that I got, and I'm going to pour my corn on here. It's in the cloth. One of the things that they say about corn is that you don't leave one of them behind, and you don't leave one of them by itself, because they'll cry. And if you don't know that we have a direct relationship with corn, and we have DNA of corn. So people wondered why we have really high cheekbones and we didn't have a lot of milk. Corn and juniper ash is where we got a lot of our calcium. And when we put those two together, it creates niacin. And I dug a little hole right here to where we're just going to go ahead and plant the corn, because we're about to at the end of our last frost date. And for those of us that are planting, everything's changing. And last year we froze at the end of May, and that's almost unheard of. I'm gonna attach. Okay, now that we have our corn ready in the ground, that's going to be about a week, and we can just keep that watered. And with this variety of corn, it's almost about 100% germination rate. And so the seeds that being that the turkey brought so when you look at the turkey feathers, you can see there's a white streak, and that's the reason. I'm going to put a milk crate over the top of this, just because again there might be rodents or critters that might want to come in and sniff around and dig that up. But within a week or so up, and it'll smell really earthy, so it won't have that fermentation smell. It'll smell like earth, and that's one of the tricks to getting a successful harvest. The other thing that we talk about when we have our planting stick is how evolution has really evolved and where we've come from coming from a planting stick to a destructive way of growing and agriculture today. So today the methods that we're going to show you are going to be a regenerative way instead of just taking. So let's get started. So we have a couple raised beds that Fritz was able to construct here, and I think we're gonna do another video on the construction of the raised bed. You can make out of lumber, you can make out of reused material, you can use blocks, you can use these cinder blocks. And for this one, they have a problem with rodents, so what they were able to put on the bottom of this is hardware cloth, and it's a 1/4 inch come up and over. The only other problem is that they can kind of jump over the top here, and so with the hoops again, that's another way to mitigate that problem. So we're going to start with cardboard here. If you guys can start taking some of the tape off. We try not to use tape in into our raised bed. Previously we've done a double dug lasagna video. You got that. So it's basically organic matter. So the cardboard is carbon, and nitrogen. And what the cardboard is going to allow us to do, it's going to suffocate any weeds that are potentially growing under there without allowing them any light. And as time goes on, these guys will deteriorate in the soil. Awesome. So here are just some old sticks that look like they were harvested out back. We could bring some straw in, and can you hand me a bag of this? Yeah, a bag of those guys too. Here again, we have some. This is garden gold for us gardeners. We are always Gad's hot spot for our leaves. Can you hand me that other bag? Gonna add some manure. Now it looks like we might have a little bit of weed. Add weeds or weed seeds. Make sure they're all the way at the bottom to where they're not. And we'll help kill them off by composting this. Which one is that one? We'll save that one for the top. We can start with this. And this feed store from $6 to $10 a bale. Tina, can you get some water on that? There's some water in that jug there. Okay. Go ahead and water that fiend where they're at. Yeah, all over. So now this is aged manure, and preferably we like to use goat and sheep manure. We find that with horse manure, you can bring in invasive weeds. Organic matter and composting in place. So again, it's a regenerative way of gardening, to where we're giving back to the soil instead of taking so much from it. With the large scale agriculture, when they plow industrial fields, a lot of their topsoil will blow away. And so for us, Colorado complains about our topsoil blowing and melting a lot of their snow. So I've heard they want to sue us sometimes. Favorite food. Because their mouths are so small, this is something that we harvest on a daily basis. So we do community composting in our community, to where we pick up all the garbage from our senior center, the food scraps from the schools, and then we come back and we feed either our pigs or our worms, and then they in turn give us healthy soils and give us the manure back. So from here we can go with the compost. Is the compost in this one right here?
Right behind you, yeah.
Oh, good, thank you.
So this stuff here is again, it's already been composted, really healthy material that we're going to add, and it's a lot of microbiology. You can see those guys that are just really beneficial for soil. If you don't have a compost, definitely start one. But you could also just use your kitchen scraps, like potato peels, banana peels, all of that stuff that you might be throwing away. You can always have a section in your garden open to add more material. So again, this is composting and placed, and I think that's actually a lot of worms in there for this section. So we'll save some of that for on this side, and then this is some of the native soil that they have here. Is that correct? Yeah. And then we'll just start shoveling this on top of that, and we'll give it about 4 inches on top.
In the compost, I heard we don't use onion and citrus fruit. Is that true?
We use onions, and then for some people they say not to use citrus. For us, we have a really heavy clay loam, so adding citrus for alkaline, it kind of brings us in balance. So if you look at your scale for pH, you have alkaline on one side at 14, and then you have acid at 0, and the plants really like it around 7 or 8, so to bring them neutral. So for us, I do bring pine needles in. People say not to bring pine needles in, but again, that has acidic matter to it as well. But for us, for our region where we're at, we have really heavy clay and a lot of alkaline, so those really help combat that problem.
How do we know how to measure the pH in the soil?
They have small kits that you can buy that have pH testers. We could also show you how to do simple jar testing and soil testing with using a small jar, and then other ways of looking at soil is just feeling it. looking at it, we can tell you what kind of soil that you're working with just by looking at it, feeling it, doing a field test. So there's a couple different ways that you can check it, but for the most part, most of the Southwest and the desert area, we lack a lot of organic matter, and so you can see we have soil, but a lot of it can be dormant, meaning it's sleeping. We don't have enough water, we don't have enough microbes, we don't have enough forest land going on. So a lot of what we do is just mimic nature. We can put a little bit more on there. We mimic nature. So when you go out to the forest and you're walking around out there and you go under the trees, you look under the pine needles, and you can see microbiology, you can see mycelium in the soil, you can see a soil food web, you can see things happening in there. Yeah, it's alive. But when you go out to the desert, sometimes it looks like we just have glow sand. It doesn't look like it's alive, but we can build that up. It's really good soil. So some of our seeds have adapted to some of that kind of soil that it's not as healthy. So our seeds are really strong and resilient as well. So seeds are another really important topic. And we could add we can keep it above the bed, because once we water it and that stuff starts decomposing, it's going to drop. So we can leave it about this high on top. And is there anything in particular that you want to plant in this garden here?
Are we planting today?
Yeah, I brought you some squash, and I brought some. So I was thinking we could do Three Sisters.
Yeah.
Three Sisters is companion planting, and what it is corn, beans, and squash, and they have a symbiotic relationship. Not only in the garden, but when they get onto your plate too. So when you have corn and beans, it's a complete protein. You don't have to have meat. So they really help one another. And in the garden, the corn will act as a stalk, and the squash will act like a ground cover, so it's not heating up, the ground's not heating up so much. And then the beans is as part of the legume family, so it's considered a cover crop. So it gathers all of the photosynthesis and the energy that's provided by the sunlight, and it takes that through its leaves, and then it transfers it down through its roots, and it feeds nitrogen for the other plants. On the other hand, corn is kind of a really heavy feeder, and it takes a lot of nitrogen. So you can see we added nitrogen in there. The manure is nitrogen, and so the leaves and then the straw are going to act like a sponge. They're going to absorb water. So as our plant root systems, as they start going down into that sponge and that water, the manure is going to trickle down on top of them, and it's going to naturally fertilize them. So we don't need Miracle-Gro.
Yeah.
So
Good. We're gonna grow some food, you guys.
self-sufficient. So I have a few varieties of corn, beans, and squash. This one is the Cherokee Tale of Tears. So they're black beans. I've been growing this variety for over a decade of our white corn, and for us, a lot of our origin stories come from white corn boy and yellow corn girl, and so again, we have really intricate ties to our seeds and to this way of life. So we'll just do a little demo here in a way that we plant. And so if I'm not fermenting, and if I'm just starting from a dry soil, I usually, and you can plant this one if you like. We go down pretty deep for our corn, and we plant about 7 to 10 seeds, and from person to person it could vary. But this is the way we do, and we can always thin the seeds out as they come up. So one of our grandma's teaching is, I normally don't step on a raised bed or a lasagna bed because we try to avoid compaction. But the way Grandma told us is kind of you stand on it there, and the corn's going to come out here, and it's going to grow strong. So you can kind of see that indentation of where that corn's at in the middle, yeah. So from there, we can put in some squash that we already started, and this was started back at home. You want to plant this one?
Do I take it out of there?
Oh, so you put it upside down and then just kind of wiggle the pot? Yeah. And this is the Navajos striped squash. So they call it Nayizibitse or Nayizinodoze because it has that tail on the back side of it. But it's a striped squash. And then here are some beans. So we can put some beans right on the other side of the corn.
How far?
That looks good. And then about four beans. And we'll just continue this section so we can bring more material and add on to this. Now that you know how to do the foundation, we can go around and finish these. So if you guys want to start bringing more manure, and we can start laying down cardboard, and we can finish this out here. Biga? Any questions so far, or
So do
observations?
we just do the one row, or do we do 2 rows or 3 rows?
This bed is 36 inches wide. For me, traditionally, I plant my corn about 36 inches apart, and then this squash is going to cover all of this area. It's just going to take off.
So you recommend just one row?
Yeah, I recommend, for this size bed, I recommend just one row. But if we were planting other things, there's a lot of square footage and a raised bed to where we could use every square inch. We could grow lettuces, and so you could ultimately put another undercarriage of maybe some onions. But this is the famous Three Sisters that everybody knows about. So there's other ways that we can companion plant. I also brought tomatoes. So tomatoes love carrots, onions. You can have an undercarriage, so you could grow them vertically and have an undercarriage of other plants growing. So possibly in future videos we can cover some of those. The other thing that we wanted to do is put a protective barrier over this. So what I brought here are some wall of waters, I thought. Do we have wall of waters there? So a wall of waters are, do you have any extra wall of waters by chance?
We do.
So this is a bucket that we cut out the bottom of this, and wall of waters are basically cylinders of water. Yeah, it's good right there. That allows us to extend our season by 6 to 8 weeks. And for places like Flagstaff and high elevation, they have a shorter growing season compared to places like Phoenix. And so this is one of the challenges. One of the other challenges, they have really drastic temperature drops and differences. So in May they can get anywhere from 90 degrees during the peak of the day, and then at night drop back down to almost 30. So that's one of the challenges. So what the Wall of Waters allows us to do is, again, extend our season and protect our plant from the wind and those really harsh cold nights. So as we can go ahead and fill these cylinders up here. And if you don't have access to this, because these are kind of expensive, you can use 1-gallon water containers and cover them with a plastic bag. So low-tech ways of making greenhouses. So the water will warm up during the day, and it'll release that energy at night and keep the plant warm. So again, the theme today is how to build soils, but we are going to take you through some advanced training as well. And we give a lot of credit to some of our teachers, one of them being Kim Costian, a teacher that has grown in the area and has given us some of these tools to share with people. And some of the other people would be some of the mentors and the medicine men that have really helped pave the way and built a lot of the infrastructures in our region for us to grow food. Okay, and as they're doing that,
Oh, we got 5 minutes. It's
Bye.
live stream.
5 minutes.
Here.
Oh, see how I can work this. Just squeeze around that way. So the other thing I'm going to show you how to do is put a low-tech hoop together. And what we have today are some 3/8 pieces of rebar by about 2 feet. This is just one way that you can do it. There's a few ways.
Yeah. Should I just unplug it?
We can put some more manure on that, and then more sand.
We need another load of manure to come over.
Yes, please. We can keep it coming.
All right. There isn't much, but there's another wheelbarrow.
Manure goes next on this one.
So this is some shade cloth that I bought from Home Depot, and you can see we did a little bit of homemade stitching on here, and it just allows us to put a 1/2-inch PVC pipe in there. One of the things that we have to consider is our high winds out here, so how to tighten these guys down. So again, raised beds are very beneficial and to where you can build in a cold frame or in other cases, a shade cloth. Yeah, let's see how far that is. Okay, right here. Can you hand me that hammer? Here you go. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Now that's just a really quick demo on how to set one of these guys up. So you can either cover this with ag fabric like you see back here, or you can use shade cloth for your cooler crops in the hot summertime. And you can also use plastic to make a low-tech greenhouse and season extender. So I think that covers it for this little session for now, and we'll bring you more updates as we progress. Thank you.